The grid is down. The pumps have stopped. The water that once flowed clean from your faucet is now a memory. And in its place, a desperate scramble begins for any source that might keep you alive. But as you approach that nearby river or collect rainwater from the roof, what seems like salvation is in reality a cocktail of death, teeming with pathogens that can kill faster than starvation ever could. Your body, craving hydration after just a few hours without intake, will betray you if you drink without proper treatment, leading to vomiting, diarrhea, and a rapid spiral into hypovolemic shock where blood volume plummets, organs shut down, and death arrives in as little as 3 to 5 days under the added strain of cold, exertion, or injury. Scientifically, this danger is quantified in emergency management literature, where the average adult requires at least 2 liters of safe water daily for basic survival functions like thermoregulation and waste elimination. But in high-stress grid-down environments, that demand can double or triple due to increased respiration, perspiration, and the metabolic cost of fear-driven activity. While contaminated intake triggers a vicious cycle of fluid loss exceeding intake by factors of 3 or more through secretory diarrhea mechanisms that bypass normal absorption in the small intestine. The common misunderstanding is that water from natural sources is inherently manageable if it runs clear or if you let it sit, or that commercial purification tablets are always available and sufficient. Yet this belies the hidden science of microbial ecology and contaminant chemistry. Many pathogens form protective biofilms on sediment particles or encyst in durable forms resistant to casual treatment. And chemical pollutants from upstream agriculture or urban runoff, including nitrates that cause methemoglobinemia in children, phosphates that fuel bacterial blooms, and volatile organic compounds from fuels or solvents, persist through basic methods, binding to cellular receptors and disrupting enzyme function over repeated exposures. Evidence abounds in peer-reviewed epidemiological data from the World Health Organization and field reports compiled after major disruptions, documenting how in the wake of events like the 2005 Hurricane Katrina flooding, waterborne illnesses such as E. coli infections and norovirus outbreaks surged with contamination levels exceeding safe thresholds by thousands of times, and parallel patterns observed in prolonged power outages in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, where inadequate source management amplified transmission chains. The survival implications cannot be overstated. Without addressing these threats from the outset, your group's operational capacity erodes within days as sick members consume limited resources without contributing labor or vigilance. Morale plummets under the weight of constant illness, and the ability to maintain security, forage, or repair shelter diminishes, potentially leading to the total collapse of your entire survival strategy within the first 2 weeks. As conditions escalate with rising survivor densities drawing from the same finite sources, seasonal temperature spikes accelerating bacterial replication rates by doubling every 10 degrees Celsius, and human or animal waste introducing fresh loads of fecal coliforms, the risk compounds exponentially, turning isolated cases into community-wide epidemics that fracture alliances and accelerate resource depletion. This brings us to the first critical overlooked principle that can mean the difference between sustained function and rapid decline. The science of initial assessment and pre-treatment that removes the bulk of visible and invisible threats before any disinfection even begins. In a grid-down reality where every decision carries weight, the first step many overlook is not jumping straight to purification, but carefully selecting and preparing the source water to maximize the effectiveness of whatever method you employ next. Picture yourself at the edge of a murky stream after days without reliable supply. The water looks brown with sediment and organic debris, but rushing to treat it without preparation is a fatal error that wastes fuel, clogs equipment, and leaves residual hazards intact. The analysis shows that high turbidity, the measure of suspended particles quantified in nephelometric turbidity units, or NTU, can shield pathogens from heat, chemicals, or ultraviolet radiation by absorbing energy or providing physical protection, reducing disinfection efficacy by up to 90% in controlled laboratory simulations where turbid samples required double the contact time or dosage compared to clear ones. The misunderstanding here is assuming that water appearing clear enough after simple straining through cloth is ready for final treatment, or that letting it stand overnight suffices, missing the hidden science of coagulation and flocculation, where naturally occurring polyelectrolytes in crushed Moringa oleifera seeds, or even finely ground dried beans, can neutralize the negative charges on suspended colloids, causing them to clump into larger flocks that settle rapidly under gravity, achieving reductions in turbidity from several hundred NTU down to under 5 NTU, as validated in rigorous field trials conducted across tropical and temperate zones by water engineers documenting log reductions in associated bacteria of 2 to 4 orders of magnitude. Evidence from practical applications during extended water crises, such as those in parts of Venezuela amid infrastructure failures, or in refugee settlements relying on surface sources, demonstrates that settling in large covered containers for 12 to 24 hours followed by careful decanting of the upper 2/3 removes 80 to 95% of particulates and the bacteria, protozoa, and viruses adsorbed to them, significantly lowering the biological oxygen demand and preventing overload on subsequent steps. The survival implications are immediate and compounding. By reducing the organic loads, you conserve scarce fuel for boiling, extend the lifespan of any mechanical filters by preventing clogging and channeling, minimize the chemical demand for disinfectants so that smaller doses achieve full efficacy, and greatly lower the risk of recontamination during storage, allowing your limited resources to sustain a family or small group for weeks or months longer than purely reactive approaches ever could. As escalation occurs when multiple groups converge on dwindling sources and contamination levels rise with increased foot traffic and waste accumulation, mastering this pre-treatment becomes the silent foundation that prevents small oversights from snowballing into catastrophic system failure across your entire water chain. Transitioning seamlessly from this preparation layer, we now examine the most ancient yet frequently mismanaged purification technique, still viable without electricity, boiling, and the precise thermal and environmental parameters that transform it from a partial safeguard into a dependable primary barrier. Boiling water has served as humanity's frontline defense for thousands of years, yet in the chaos following grid collapse, its application is riddled with subtle errors that leave survivors vulnerable to delayed but devastating illness. The danger manifests when you assume a few bubbles or a brief heat is enough, only to discover days later that resilient organisms have survived in pockets of uneven heating or protected sediment, causing debilitating cramps, fever, and fluid loss that spreads silently through shared vessels and weakens the entire group at the worst possible moment. The analysis from thermal death kinetics reveals that water must reach and maintain a full rolling boil, large bubbles breaking the surface continuously, for at least 1 minute at sea level to deliver the necessary energy for protein denaturation and membrane rupture across bacteria, viruses, and protozoa, with the time extending to 3 full minutes at elevations above 6,000 feet, where atmospheric pressure drops the boiling point to approximately 95 degrees Celsius, rendering shorter durations insufficient for complete inactivation of heat-resistant cysts. The widespread misunderstanding is the belief that any heated water is effectively purified or that altitude and container material make no difference. Notions perpetuated by overly generalized pocket guides that ignore real-world variables such as starting temperature, volume, and the insulating effect of high organic content. The hidden science centers on the decimal reduction value, or D value, the time in minutes required at a specific temperature to reduce a microbial population by 90%, with peer-reviewed microbiology data establishing that for Giardia lamblia cysts, a single minute at 100 degrees Celsius achieves greater than 6 log reduction, while pre-clarified water ensures uniform heat transfer and eliminates the protective micro-environments created by turbidity. Evidence from military field manuals civilian disaster response protocols, and controlled experiments conducted by institutions like the U.S. Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine confirms that strict adherence to these boiling parameters prevented outbreaks in simulated long-term power failure exercises, whereas deviations correlated directly with elevated infection rates in after-action reviews. Survival implications reach far beyond the immediate kill step. Proper boiling requires reliable fuel sources, dry wood, charcoal, or even concentrated solar reflectors in clear weather, and when executed correctly it demands no expendable chemicals or fragile membranes, producing water that can be stored for weeks if kept covered and away from recontamination, thereby freeing mental bandwidth and physical effort for other critical tasks like food procurement or shelter reinforcement. As the crisis escalates with fuel scarcity forcing shorter burns or the abandonment of boiling altogether in favor of riskier raw consumption to avoid smoke signals. Those who have internalized the exact parameters and pre-treatment synergy gain a decisive physiological edge, maintaining hydration and cognitive clarity while others succumb to cumulative weakness. This mastery of thermal disinfection naturally layers with the next silent guardian available in nearly every household, even after the lights go out. Chemical disinfection using common chlorine-based compounds, the method that extends protection into scenarios where open flames or large volumes make boiling logistically impossible. Chemical disinfection, particularly with unscented household bleach containing 5 to 6% sodium hypochlorite, offers a scalable, fuel-free alternative that becomes indispensable when wood is wet, detection risk is high, or large batches must be processed quickly, yet its deployment in grid-down conditions is plagued by dosage myths that either underprotect or create new hazards. The danger arises when survivors add arbitrary amounts or fail to wait the full contact time, allowing sub-lethal concentrations to select for resistant strains or, conversely, producing excessive chloramine byproducts that irritate the gut lining and reduce palatability to the point of refusal. The analysis is grounded in redox chemistry and disinfection kinetics. Free chlorine in the form of hypochlorous acid penetrates cell walls, oxidizing proteins and nucleic acids to achieve 4 to 6 log reductions in bacteria and viruses within 30 minutes at proper concentrations of 2 to 4 parts per million, with effectiveness dropping sharply in turbid or cold water below 10 degrees Celsius where reaction rates slow and organic matter consumes the active agent. The common misunderstanding is that a splash of bleach or iodine tablets works universally regardless of water condition or temperature, or that once treated the water remains safe indefinitely, overlooking the hidden science of chlorine demand, the amount of oxidant consumed by dissolved organics and ammonia before free residual chlorine remains available for pathogen kill, and the subsequent formation of disinfection byproducts like trihalanthanes that, while generally below acute toxicity thresholds in short-term use, accumulate with chronic exposure and warrant aeration or secondary carbon filtration where possible. Evidence from emergency water treatment guidelines issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, corroborated by field data from humanitarian responses in earthquake zones and flood-ravaged regions, shows that precise dosing, 2 drops of 8.25% bleach per liter for clear warm water, doubling for cloudy or cold, combined with 30-minute contact and a faint chlorine odor as confirmation of residual, consistently prevented outbreaks where boiling was impractical due to fuel constraints. Survival implications are transformative in resource-constrained environments. A single gallon of standard bleach can treat thousands of liters, extending your purification capacity months beyond fuel-limited boiling alone, while the method's portability allows treatment at the point of collection, reducing transport of heavy, untreated water and minimizing cross-contamination in storage vessels. As escalation intensifies with colder weather slowing reaction kinetics, or increased organic pollution from decaying matter raising chlorine demand to levels that exhaust small supplies, the groups that have calibrated their dosing protocols and maintained secondary barriers like cloth pre-filters preserve both health and precious chemical stocks, buying critical time until more permanent solutions can be established. Building directly on this chemical foundation, the next layer addresses the contaminants boiling and chlorine cannot touch, dissolved heavy metals, pesticides, and salts that require the physical separation process of distillation, the ultimate grid-independent purifier that demands patience but delivers near absolute safety. Distillation stands as the most comprehensive single-step purification available, without electricity, forcing water into vapor and leaving behind virtually all non-volatile contaminants. Yet its adoption in survival planning remains surprisingly low because the process appears slow and equipment-intensive until the hidden efficiencies are understood. The danger is subtle but cumulative. Reliance on boiling or chemicals alone in areas with industrial runoff or geological arsenic deposits allows neurotoxic metals and endocrine-disrupting compounds to concentrate in the body over weeks, manifesting as fatigue, tremors, or developmental issues in the young that erode long-term viability precisely when generational continuity matters most. The analysis of phase change physics demonstrates that heating water to vapor at 100 degrees Celsius and condensing it on a cooler surface separates pure H2O from salts, heavy metals with boiling points above 300 degrees, and most organic pesticides that remain in the residue, achieving greater than 99.9% removal rates for total dissolved solids as measured in conductivity tests. The misunderstanding is viewing distillation as luxury or impossible without specialized stills, ignoring the hidden science of improvised solar or fire-driven designs where a simple pot, lid, and angled collection tube, fashioned from scavenged copper tubing, or even plastic sheeting in a solar still, can produce 1 to 2 liters per hour under direct sun or steady flame, with the key principle being the temperature gradient that ensures only water vapor travels while contaminants stay behind. Evidence from engineering literature and real-world deployments, including solar stills used by stranded mariners and desert travelers documented in survival case studies, as well as laboratory validations by environmental engineering departments showing distilled water conductivity dropping from hundreds of microsiemens to under 10, confirms its reliability even when source water contains mixed biological and chemical threats. Survival implications reshape entire strategies. While slower than other methods, distillation requires no consumables beyond fuel or sunlight, produces water safe for medical use or infant formula, and can be scaled with multiple units or continuous feed designs using scavenged materials, thereby converting abundant but polluted sources into a renewable lifeline that sustains hydration, cooking, and even wound cleaning without introducing new toxins. As the grid-down scenario escalates into months with groundwater tables dropping and surface sources becoming increasingly brackish or chemically laden from abandoned infrastructure leaks, those who have constructed and maintained basic stills secure an advantage that compounds daily, transforming a liability into a strategic asset while less prepared groups face progressive poisoning and decline. This comprehensive layering of pre-treatment, boiling, chemical disinfection, and distillation forms the core technical framework, yet the final and often most neglected pillar, secure long-term storage and recontamination prevention, determines whether your purified water remains an asset or reverts to a vector of disease weeks after production. Even the purest water becomes deadly again within hours if storage practices violate the principles of barrier integrity and hygiene, a fact that turns many otherwise successful purification efforts into slow-motion failures as biofilms colonize containers and airborne or hand-borne contaminants reintroduce pathogens. The danger escalates quietly. A single untreated finger dipped into a storage vessel or a loosely covered bucket exposed to dust and insects can reseed millions of coliforms, leading to exponential growth in warm conditions where doubling times drop to 20 minutes. The analysis from materials science and microbiology highlights that food-grade plastic or glass containers with tight-fitting lids, sanitized initially with a strong chlorine solution and kept in cool, dark locations, maintain residual disinfection for weeks, while the hidden science of headspace management and periodic testing, using simple hydrogen sulfide producing bacterial indicators or visual clarity checks, prevents the establishment of anaerobic zones where new threats like Clostridium botulinum spores could theoretically activate in poorly managed large volume storage. The misunderstanding is treating storage as an afterthought, simply filling any available bottle without cleaning or rotation, missing that recontamination accounts for up to 40% of waterborne illness in prolonged emergencies according to post-disaster health surveys. Evidence from humanitarian logistics in extended displacement camps and military long-term water storage protocols shows that rotating stock every 6 months using opaque containers to block algal growth and maintaining a small chlorine residual of 0.2 to 0.5 ppm keeps water safe for a year or more even under austere conditions. Survival implications lock in every prior effort. Proper storage multiplies the effective yield of your purification labor, reduces daily treatment workload, and creates a strategic reserve that buffers against weather disruptions or mobility requirements, allowing focus on higher-order needs like defense or agriculture. As the overall crisis escalates towards seasonal shifts that introduce new vectors, freezing that cracks containers or flooding that submerges caches, the disciplined application of storage science becomes the difference between measured endurance and sudden collapse when the next supply shock arrives. With these foundational barriers now in place, the narrative shifts to the advanced, low-tech augmentations that stretch resources even further when commercial supplies run out and ingenuity must replace convenience. When the commercial filters and tablets eventually run dry in the prolonged absence of supply chains, the real test of long-term water security shifts to biological and mechanical barriers that harness natural processes and scavenged materials, methods that many dismiss as primitive until their sustained performance under duress becomes undeniable. The danger lurks in assuming that once water is disinfected it stays safe without ongoing protection, or that improvised systems are too unreliable to trust with health, leading groups to abandon them prematurely and revert to riskier shortcuts that introduce chronic low-level exposure to pathogens and accelerate organ stress over months. The analysis from microbiology and filtration engineering shows that slow sand filtration, known more commonly in survival contexts as the bio-sand filter, relies on a Schmutzdecke, a biologically active layer that forms on the sand surface after weeks of use, where predatory protozoa, bacteria, and extracellular enzymes trap and degrade pathogens through predation adsorption and biodegradation, achieving consistent reductions of 90 to 99% for bacteria like E. coli, over 99% for protozoan cysts such as Cryptosporidium and Giardia, and variable but significant inactivation of viruses through physical straining and biological antagonism. The misunderstanding persists that sand filtration is merely a crude strainer requiring boiling afterward, or that it demands precise commercial-grade construction, overlooking the hidden science of hydraulic loading rates and ripening time where a properly layered system. Coarse gravel at the bottom for drainage, finer separation gravel, then 40 to 60 centimeters of uniform fine sand with an effective size around 0.15 to 0.35 millimeters. Operates at a slow drip rate of about 40 to 60 liters per hour per square meter, allowing sufficient residence time for biological action, while preventing channeling. Evidence from organizations like the Center for Affordable Water and Sanitation Technology documents field implementations in disaster-prone regions and long-term household use showing sustained pathogen removal after the initial 2 to 6 week ripening period, with turbidity reductions to under 1 NTU and bacterial counts dropping by several logs, even in highly contaminated sources, patterns replicated in refugee camps and rural programs where maintenance consists only of periodic surface scraping to refresh the biofilm. Survival implications are profound for grid-down endurance. Once ripened, a bio-sand filter requires no fuel, no chemicals, and minimal daily labor beyond pouring and occasional cleaning, producing volumes sufficient for a family of 4 to 6 indefinitely from surface or rainwater sources. thereby conserving scarce energy for other priorities and reducing the physiological burden of repeated boiling or chemical dosing that can irritate mucous membranes over time. As escalation continues with population movements, concentrating waste near collection points, and seasonal rains flushing new contaminants into streams, the passive biological purification provided by these systems creates a resilient buffer that maintains output quality when other methods falter due to resource exhaustion or environmental shifts. This biological foundation pairs powerfully with another low-tech mechanical allied ceramic filtration, whose microporous structure delivers reliable physical exclusion long after disposable options expire. Ceramic filters, whether sourced from pre-existing household units or improvised from fired clay pots modified with colloidal silver impregnation where possible, represent a durable, cleanable barrier that excels in removing bacteria and protozoa through size exclusion and surface adsorption. Yet their grid-down potential is frequently underestimated until the moment commercial replacements become unavailable. The danger emerges when users overload dirty water through clogged pores or neglect regular scrubbing, allowing breakthrough of finer contaminants or biofilm regrowth that compromises output and introduces taste issues that discourage consistent use. The analysis draws from materials science and pore size distribution studies showing that traditional unglazed ceramic elements with effective pore sizes of 0.2 to 0.5 micrometers physically block most bacteria and larger protozoa, while silver nanoparticles, if incorporated during manufacturing or post-applied via dilute solutions, provide residual antimicrobial action that inhibits regrowth within the matrix, yielding log reductions of 4 to 6 for coliforms and near-complete removal of helminths and cysts under proper flow conditions. The misunderstanding is that any porous clay vessel suffices, or that once slowed the filter is broken beyond repair, ignoring the hidden science of backwashing and maintenance protocols where gentle scrubbing of the outer surface with a stiff brush removes accumulated debris without damaging the internal structure, restoring flow rates and extending service life to years or decades with periodic deep cleaning using boiled water soaks. Evidence from humanitarian deployments and independent testing of units like those produced in developing regions confirms consistent performance over multi-year periods, with bacterial removal rates holding above 99% even as flow decreases gradually, and field reports from prolonged crises documenting how locally fabricated ceramic pots adapted into gravity systems prevented outbreaks where reliance on untreated or inadequately treated water otherwise prevailed. Survival implications reshape resource allocation. A well-maintained ceramic system processes liters per hour without energy input, requires only occasional labor for cleaning, and can be repaired or replicated using basic pottery skills and local clay, turning abundant but risky sources into a steady supply that supports hydration, hygiene, and small-scale food preparation while freeing personnel from daily intensive treatment duties. As the scenario escalates into years, with infrastructure decay introducing more particulate and microbial loads, the mechanical robustness and low-maintenance nature of ceramic barriers provide compounding reliability, allowing groups to focus on agricultural recovery or defensive posture rather than constant health crises. Layering these passive systems with plant-based coagulation takes the approach even further into self-sustaining territory, leveraging biochemistry that has been validated across centuries but remains underutilized in modern survival planning. The use of crushed Moringa oleifera seeds as a natural coagulant stands as one of the most overlooked yet scientifically robust enhancements to low-tech purification, capable of transforming highly turbid sources into clear, low-pathogen water ready for final disinfection or filtration with minimal added effort. The danger is clearest in flood or post-storm environments where sediment loads skyrocket and shield microbes from treatment, rendering boiling or chemicals far less effective and increasing gastrointestinal illness rates that deplete strength at the precise moment physical demands peak. The analysis centers on the cationic proteins in moringa seeds that act as polyelectrolytes, binding to negatively charged particles and bridging them into flocks that settle rapidly, with optimal dosages around 50 to 200 milligrams per liter, achieving turbidity reductions of 90 to 99% and associated bacterial and protozoan removals of 1 to 3 logs through sweep flocculation and adsorption mechanisms. The misunderstanding frames it as folklore or unreliable compared to alum, missing the hidden science of protein structure and charge neutralization, where aqueous extracts from defatted seeds provide a biodegradable alternative free of residual toxicity, effective across a broad pH range of 6 to 9, and leaving no harmful byproducts unlike synthetic coagulants. Evidence from controlled studies and field applications in tropical regions documents turbidity drops from hundreds of NTU to under 5, with concurrent microbial reductions validated by plate counts and turbidity correlations, while deployments in wastewater treatment and emergency settings confirm enhanced downstream disinfection efficiency and reduced organic demand. Survival implications extend the lifespan of every other method. By clarifying water first, moringa use slashes fuel needs for boiling, prevents rapid clogging of ceramic or sand filters, lowers chemical consumption in bleach treatment, and improves palatability to encourage adequate intake, creating a synergistic chain that multiplies overall system output and resilience. As escalation brings drier seasons concentrating pollutants or wet periods overwhelming sources with organics, access to even a few moringa trees or stored seed powder becomes a strategic multiplier, enabling consistent production from marginal water that would otherwise be abandoned. This plant-assisted clarification dovetails directly with solar-powered disinfection, a zero-fuel method that harnesses ultraviolet radiation and heat to achieve high inactivation rates under clear skies, extending purification capacity into fuel-scarce periods. Solar water disinfection, or SHTF, leverages the synergistic action of solar ultraviolet A rays and elevated temperatures to damage microbial DNA and denature proteins, offering a passive, scalable technique ideal when fuel conservation is paramount yet sunlight is abundant. The danger intensifies during extended overcast periods, or when users shorten exposure times, allowing partial inactivation that selects for hardy strains and leads to sporadic but severe outbreaks. The analysis from photobiology establishes that clear PET bottles filled with clarified water exposed horizontally to full sun for 6 hours at temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius achieve greater than 6 log reductions for most bacteria and viruses, with thermal enhancement accelerating kill rates as water reaches 50 to 60 degrees, while turbidity below 5 NTU ensures adequate UV penetration. The misunderstanding treats it as a backup only for clear water or ignores oxygen's role in generating reactive oxygen species that amplify damage, overlooking the hidden science of photoreactivation prevention through sufficient exposure duration and the importance of shaking bottles post-exposure to redistribute inactivated cells. Evidence from controlled WHO-supported trials and field implementations in equatorial and subtropical zones shows consistent compliance yielding dramatic drops in diarrheal disease incidence, with laboratory validations confirming efficacy against resistant pathogens like Cryptosporidium oocysts under optimized conditions. Survival implications are game-changing in sunny climates, requiring nothing beyond scavenged, transparent containers. SHTF processes liters daily per person with zero consumables, integrates seamlessly after coagulation or settling, and builds psychological resilience by providing a reliable daylight task that reinforces discipline. As the crisis drags into seasonal variability with shorter daylight or dust storms reducing irradiance, those who combine SHTF with clarification and storage maintain hydration security longer, bridging gaps until more robust infrastructure can be rebuilt. With these advanced low-tech layers now integrated, the narrative closes on the overarching principle that governs true endurance: relentless redundancy and adaptation, ensuring no single failure cascades into catastrophe.